Smile, Edith.
Okay, let me just get rid of this.
Yeah.
As chair of the House Ways and Means Committee, I find that due to the state of emergency declared by the governor as a result of COVID-19 pandemic, and in accordance with House Rule 67 and the governor's emergency order number 12 pursuant to Executive Order 2020-04, this public body is authorized to meet electronically. This is a revenue work session. Please note there is no physical location for members of the public to observe and listen contemporaneously to this meeting. However, in accordance with the emergency order, I am confirming that all members of the committee and select legislative staff have the ability to communicate contemporaneously during this meeting through the Zoom electronic meeting platform, and the public has access to contemporaneously listen and, if necessary, participate in this meeting by the Zoom platform or by telephone. All necessary access information has been made available on the House calendar and through the electronic calendar on the General Court website. The notice of this meeting complies with the House Rules RSA 91A. Anyone who has a problem accessing the meeting should call 271-3600 or email hcs@lake.state.nh.us. In the event the public is unable to access the meeting will be adjourned and rescheduled. I want to introduce the staff that are on the meeting assisting us: Christopher Shea and Jen Floor. Please note that all votes that are taken during this meeting should be done by roll call vote. We'll start the meeting by taking a roll call of attendance. When each member states their presence, please also state whether there is anyone in the room with you during this meeting, which is required under the right to know law. Representative Bernstein, you want to take the roll?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good morning to you. Good morning, everyone. It's Tuesday, June the 8th, 2021. It's 9:03 a.m. We'll begin roll call with Representative Patrick Abrami.
Yes, I'm here in my home in Stratham alone.
Representative Mary Griffin. Representative Jordan O'Leary. Representative Russ Ober.
Here in Hudson with the 6 cats who are very happy for the air conditioning.
I would imagine so. Representative Fred Doucette. Your clerk is Alan Burstein. I'm in my home office by myself in Nottingham, New Hampshire. Representative Robert Elliott.
Here in Salem, New Hampshire, and my wife is recuperating in the bedroom.
It's good that she's home.
Yes,
Please send her our good wishes. Representative John Janigian.
Yes, I'm here in my home in Salem and my wife is in the house.
Representative Herschel Nunez.
Good morning. I'm home alone in very warm Pelham, New Hampshire.
Representative, but you are one cool cat, so you will fare just well. Just fine today. Representative Tim Baxter. Representative Walter Spilsbury.
Good morning. Home alone in Charlestown.
Good morning. Representative Paul Tudor.
Home alone in Northwood.
Representative Susan Almy. I'm alone in Lebanon. Representative Richard Ames.
I'm here in Jaffrey in my home office alone.
Representative Thomas Southworth. Representative Dennis Malloy.
I'm here alone in Greenland.
My favorite part of roll call, the Honorable Representative Thomas C. Schamberg.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk Burstein. I'm here in hot and humid Wilmette. My wife and I are in our offices, and we have 4 gentlemen downstairs that are putting in wood in the living room, kitchen, dining room, and the hallway.
Well, hey,
thank you.
It's good to see you. Do us a favor and just tip your cap to us. There you go. Representative Edith Tucker.
I'll leave it on.
You're muted, Representative Tucker.
Home alone in Randolph.
Representative Gomarlo.
I'm home alone, I hope. If that snake shows up, you'll know it. In Swansea.
Representative Tom Laufman. Representative Amanda Gorg.
Good morning. I am present and alone.
Good morning. Representative Mary Hacken Phillips. Representative James Murphy.
Good morning. I'm home alone in Hanover.
And our chairman, Representative Norman Major.
Right now, I'm alone in my home in Plastow, but my wife should be coming home soon. Representative Bernstein, did we get a response from Fred Doucette?
I have Fred marked as absent.
There is on the screen.
I am present, Mr. Clerk, home alone in Salem.
All
Take a
right.
minute. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Representative Doucette. Mr. Chair, there are 18 members present, 6 are not here.
Thank you, Representative Bernstein. I've scheduled 2 meetings this week, one today and one tomorrow. The only reason I scheduled a meeting tomorrow is in case we needed it if we didn't finish our work today. Because if we didn't finish our work today and I hadn't scheduled, then we couldn't hold a meeting tomorrow. So tomorrow's meeting is dependent upon where we stand today. And if we do meet tomorrow, because of timing schedules, we would meet at 10 o'clock rather than 9 o'clock. I've had some discussions with Senator Guider and with Chris Shea, and I've got a feeling that if we push it maybe beyond 12 or so, we might be able to not meet tomorrow, but let's see how it goes. There is a few things I want to mention. One, House Bill 15 was amended by the Senate. And so I got a Senate message. And all they did on the amendment, and that House Bill 15 was to do with the car rental, make sure that all car rentals pay the rooms and meals tax. It would be effective 60 days after passage. So if, let's say it passed and the governor signed it July 1st, then September 1st, it should be effective. The Senate, at the request of the DRA, changed it to October 1st, just another 30 days. Does anybody on this committee have a problem with that? If not, is everybody on the committee in agreement to concur? We don't have to take a vote, just put your hand up if you're not.
Not, or yes?
If you don't want to concur, put your hand up. So I'm going to Representative Ober. But no, I don't see any hands. So I'll let the clerk know that we will be concurring on House Bill 15. Now, this past week on Senate Bill 103, the Senate had an amendment which would put the landfill bill, House Bill 177, on 103. And 103 was the disaster-related emergency bill, which allowed these utilities in an emergency to come in and start restoration without all the required paperwork that would normally go with that. I talked to Senator Guider, and Senator Guider, the Senate position is they would want to take it out of a committee of conference. So
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
Senator Guider, his feeling is that the committee of conference, the Senate would want to remove the House Bill 177 from 103 because they already ITL'd it by a majority vote in the Senate. So be prepared for that. The Senate will probably send us a message non-concurring and forming a committee of conference on that.
So they will form, I'm asking because I'm the prime sponsor of HB 177. And I haven't been through this with a bill of mine, so I need to understand what you're saying. So it will go to a committee of conference?
If they concur and form a committee of conference, they will. If they do not concur, it dies.
And so you're telling us,
Both bills die.
so what are you telling us that you think is going to, Senator Guide has said?
That it goes to committee of conference, that the Senate will want to remove it since they, as a Senate, voted to ITL House Bill 177. Senate Bill 103 is a very important bill for the state, and they know that. That's why they put it on to this bill. So what's your feelings?
I think we got to concur. I mean, we got to, I think we got to go to the committee of conference.
Yeah, we
It's out
have
of
to
the
go to committee of conference. Some of us on, obviously, those of us who were on the winning side of the amendment would want to be represented on that committee of conference. Thank you.
All right, so then the position of the committee, and let's see if we agree with this, is to concur and form a committee of conference, or that they would have to do that.
That's
They
going
have
to
to
be
do
their
that.
message to us. And I guess we're saying, yes, we'll accept the committee of conference.
But our position right now is 177 is on 103. And that was settled on the floor with a vote of 183 to 181. All right, and then the third one, I talked to Senator Guider relative to Senate Bill 101, where the threshold was changed from 75,000 to 92,000 to account for cost of living, and then the addition of having a cost of living factor in there going forward. He has talked to the prime sponsor of that bill, and she does not have a problem with that. So my feeling is that they will concur with this. Anything else on the housekeeping items? If not, then we'll go into the revenues. Press Shay. Is he?
Good morning, Representative Major. I'm here.
Okay, good. Now, Chris will go over the Senate Ways and Means revenues that are in their past House Bill 1 and House Bill 2. We must remember when we did our revenue estimates, it was in March 18th. We didn't have the full revenues of March or the full revenues of April, which are the two heavy revenue producing months. So the Senate had an advantage over us on these. So my wife is normally home to answer the phone, but so we'll go over that. I think that there's not that, well, let's go over and take them one at a time. Go ahead, Chris, it's yours to explain the Senate revenue estimates relative to what we did.
Okay, Representative Major, thank you. On Friday, or maybe it was Thursday, I sent an email to the full committee with two attached documents. One of them was a PDF file dated May 27th, 2021, and it said final on it. And I'm going to pull that up in the share screen and walk you through that.
Good.
So you should see that on my screen now. So the first page after the date page, let's blow it up a little bit, are the DRA tax estimate ranges that they provided for the business tax, meals and rooms, tobacco, real estate transfer, utility property, all the same taxes that they did with your committee back in March.
With different numbers because there's a different time period.
Exactly. So they're updated to reflect what occurred through April. And if you were to look back at what you had back in March and what you see here, the numbers are going to be slightly different in some instances and largely different in others, particularly with the business taxes. But again, the process was similar to what you went through, where DRA provides a high and a low, and then a percent growth to apply to the low and a percent growth to apply to the high, to provide a range for the committee to consider when they're doing their estimates. So the next page, just shrink it down just a little bit. So what we have here is your current law estimates for your various revenue sources. Then you had the plan for fiscal year 21, and then the House Ways and Means for 21, 22, 23, followed by the Senate Ways and Means 21, 22, 23, and then the difference between your estimates.
And on those estimates, this is with the anomaly removed for 21.
Yeah, so you'll notice there's an asterisk on the fiscal year 21 that indicates that $30.8 million was removed from each of the business taxes, or excuse me, each of the tax sources described below. So for instance, the business taxes had $18.2 million removed from that in the base number. Meals and Rooms had 1.6 million adjusted downward. So yes, these numbers are net of the anomalous accruals. So the largest difference is in your business taxes. You can see the Senate Ways and Means for fiscal year 21 is $126 million higher than what the House projected or estimated, 150 million higher than in 22, and then $159 million higher in 23. And again, that's a result of the numbers that came in April, and then some assumptions that the committee made in terms of growth going into 2022 and 23. Representative Brahmi, you have your hand up.
Right, Representative Bromley.
Let me show, are we going to discuss these each individually as we go along? I want to, after you get done explaining the columns, are you going to go through all of them, or are we going to discuss each one as we go along?
We can do it however is easiest for the committee.
I think for completeness, we should take one at a time, go through the business taxes, then the Meals and Rooms, and the tobacco taxes.
Okay. So I'll have a question as soon as you're done explaining the columns, Chris.
No, I think you can ask Representative Brahmi. That's pretty much the columns, and it's it's fairly simplistic presentation.
Okay. No, I think we've seen this before. So in terms of the format, so as of the end of May, the revenues were 848.1. Then you have to subtract the 18.3. So that puts us at $829.8 million. That's in the door. And obviously we had estimated 837. So that's, to get to the Senate's number, you have to add $133.4 million for June.
Yep.
Question I have is, what was planned for June? Does somebody have that handy? I couldn't find my document.
I've got it. It's on 129.3. So they're being very conservative.
Okay. So and I guess all I'm suggesting is that the question is, does anybody feel that we're not going to hit the 129.3, or do we think we're going to hit the 133.4? That's $4 million more in June. So that's, to me, that's how we resolve this first column, because then everything else is driven off of that for the out years. So what did you say?
129.3. And I estimated out from that 2 different ways and came in considerably above the Senate number. But I'm wondering if the DRA is worried we may have refunds, or that there are other signs that things might might be slowing down in June that we should be
Yes.
afraid of.
I've asked the DRA to be with us. Jen, would you make sure they're to bring them in?
Melissa's on the call. I saw her name on the screen, and I don't mind if she would like to jump in at any point. But I think the DRA is doing the best that they can in making the estimates based on the wildly inconsistent nature that we've seen revenues occur in the last 3-4 months. I don't think anybody anticipated to see revenues, especially in the business taxes, to be where they are right now. But I'll defer if Melissa would like to make a comment.
Sure.
And I don't mean to put you on the spot,
No,
Melissa.
no.
I apologize.
No worries. Melissa Rollins, Senior Financial Analyst for Department of Revenue. Good questions. I do want to note that when the Senate did theirs, their estimates hadn't fully been completed yet.
Right.
And May did come in higher than anticipated. Part of that, I believe, was due to the federal extended due date. I don't think we anticipated as many taxpayers were going to take advantage of that. As you know, New Hampshire did not extend their due date. So May came in 14.8 million higher than our low end and 10.9 million higher than our high end. So there is a little bit of a discrepancy there because it did come in higher than anticipated. And again, Senate didn't have May numbers at that point.
Chair, I'm just trying to, I guess we got to decide on what methodology we want to use to come up with this base year. Again, if we use the 129.3 million, which is the plan, and we add it to the 829.8, what, I'm doing a calc, I got it.
It's 977.4.
Mm-hmm.
129.3, I thought. Yeah, 129.3.
It's 129.3. And as of May, we're at, after we take out the anomalous revenue, that's 829.8. So that gives us 959.1. And the Senate's at was the Senate at 963.2. Did I do that right? Right. So,
Yes.
but Susan is saying that she came up with, you came up higher?
Well, the slightly lower number that I came up with was taking the average, excluding 2020, of on the last 5 years of how much June is relative to the entire year. And that one produced 900, taking out the 18.3, whatever it is, 990.1, which is considerably higher. But we don't know if people ended up paying early or whether there are going to be more refunds. So I was just wondering if the DRA was being cautious or whether they were thinking in terms of the month before, which is what they did in the May 26 document. They started from April. But if we did make this number higher, I think that we should anticipate less growth in the following year.
Let me just do one thing. DRA's range was 947.5, and the low high is 964.9 divided by 2. So their midpoint was 956.2. All right. So 956.2. And then doing what I did, taking actual plus plan gave us 959.1. So just to break the ice here, let's just to say, okay, I'll put that on the table as a potential number,
959.1.
right? And the basis is current actuals through May plus plan, 959.1. And that is slightly above, 3 million above, let's call it 3 million above the midpoint of DRA.
And Melissa, on your estimates of lot, low and high, that has removed the anomaly?
It does.
Yes.
Okay, good.
I'm not wedded to this. I'm just saying that it's one methodology to use.
Representative Spilsbury?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess I'm looking for some help understanding this as a freshman going through it the first time. But if we accept Representative Abrami's methodology, had 959.1, what we're doing is we're making our best guess of what actually is received without regard to whether a significant portion may be then subject to refund. So given the amount of uncertainty, both on the question we had discussed a couple of months ago regarding the credit carry forward overhang, as well as the doubt about how much is attributable to estimates that assumed current law rather than SB3. My concern is, how do we go about making our forward projections for FY22 and 23? And the suggestion was made a moment ago, maybe we need to adjust the growth rates, but it seems to me the better methodology would be to keep the same growth rates unless there's an economic reason to change them, but to make a downward adjustment in the base so that FY21 at 959 is adjusted downward to correct for what we think is the aberrational excess that may have to be refunded. Now, I don't know how to guess at that figure, but methodologically, I think it makes more sense to adjust the FY21 base down and then apply the same growth rates for FY22 and 23 that we previously assumed.
Mr. Chair, can I react to that, please?
Representative Bronner.
I'd love to do that too, but I think we have to come in with a real number for the base, because that number is real when it comes to finance. They use that number because they're going to spend that number in future years, the overage based on that number. So I can remember we're projecting what it really is going to be. I think we have to do our adjusting in the out years. Do you understand that? Do you follow that logic? We can't.
Well, it may be that we can come at the same.
What we can do is, look, this is what we think the revenue is really. Look, we're only debating right now 1 month. We know what money has come in already through the first 11 months. We know it's going to be much higher than planned. So we can't really adjust that down when we show it. Now, when we do our math going forward, we can on the side say, okay, this was an unusual base year high because of the PPP, all that stuff. And on the side, we can reduce it and then do our percentages going forward. But I think we have to show 2001 as to what it really is going to be.
So I think we may be saying the same thing, Representative Abrami. I agree that FY21 has to show what we think we're actually going to collect. So whether that's 959 or 963, that's the figure we have to show for FY21. I'm just saying that in calculating 22 and 23, changing the growth rate implies that we think the economy is doing something different, whereas changing the base from which the growth rate is applied is methodologically more sound. Now, how much of an adjustment to make to the base, I don't know. So I'm only talking about how we go about projecting 22 and 23.
Okay, why don't we concentrate on the base for 21? We found out what the methodology was for getting to the 959.2 or 0.1. And that's to take the revenue that has come in the door up to date, add the plan for June, and that gives you the 959.2 or 0.1. But now, who here would say that the revenue is going to come in as planned or under? I don't think so. The revenue is going to come in higher because all the other months have come in higher. And then the reasons that they come in higher is a combination of a lot. The various stimulus things is probably contributed to a lot, and that's going to continue in June. So the number that you came up with, 959.2, needs to be adjusted, and I feel upward by an amount which nobody really knows. It needs to be adjusted. The representatives.
Thank you. Am I on? Yeah. I should preface what I say by noting that I was off the internet for about 15 minutes. It failed, so I missed some of the preambles to this, but I certainly support adjusting the number to the reality that we see now for fiscal year 21 to get the best number we can in terms of actual revenues that will be collected. So that's that. Then I would also say that I think it's pretty important to have an asterisk, a footnote, some way of differentiating between that which we feel is what we might call base that can be projected forward, and that which is in some way different. And we've got a precedent for this. A couple of years ago, we had a huge anomalous amount of money pouring in to the state through probably through foreign dividends that were taxable in New Hampshire as a result of the federal tax reform law causing repatriation of money by mega corporations. And so we did the same thing in FY21. We had the total, but we had sort of the base number that we thought was the base number, and then we split out the anomalous number, and that aspect of our revenue collection for that year was mentioned in our in the CAFR actually. So here we are in a very different but similar, conceptually at least, situation, and we've got the difficult. We perhaps have more difficult separation issue. I think it's more difficult than back in FY19 because it's so difficult to calculate. There's the what Representative Spilsbury mentioned, the SB3 PPP issue and potential for refunds related to that. There's in a very large sense, there's this incredible stimulus, economic stimulus that has hit New Hampshire in a favorable way. Billions of federal dollars flowing into New Hampshire, enabling people to buy things that they wouldn't have bought before, enabling businesses to carry on where they would have failed, and so forth. We all know that this is true. And when you've got that much money that's out of the norm flowing in, you're going to see it in tax revenues. And I believe that's what's happening. with our business revenues. I can't prove anything, but I believe there is a phenomenon here, and at the very least, we should note it, and it should lead to caution as we make projections going forward, and as our successors 2 years from now try to make projections off of whatever actually transpires.
Thank you, Representative Ames. Some good thoughts. Representative Bromley,
I'm fine with all of what's been said. The other thing we should point out is that the Senate agrees with us that after they projected their revenues, they went along with the concept of the surplus statement, and they took the DRA's number that they gave, the DRA gave us. So in the surplus statement, they're reducing 22 business taxes by 25.4 million. And in 23, they're reducing business taxes by 44 million. So we just got to keep that in mind, that after we get done projecting 22 and 23, understand that on the surplus statement, we're going to be subtracting some of that revenue, the 25.4 and the 44.4, for the fact that payments, there's going to be refunds, basically,
Yes.
or less quarterly payments going on in those 2 years because of people already paying the tax. But I also appreciate the fact that, and I agree with Representative Spilsbury and Representative Ames, that there's something here that we really should be reducing the base. It does seem like a false base to me as well, to then move forward with our projections based on we think the real economy is going to be. And I think Representative Major is basically, I think you're saying the same thing, that well, you're saying that the base actually should be more than the plan because of all this other stimulus. I mean, the PPP alone was 3.7 billion.
Yeah.
So I'm willing to increase my methodology by something. I don't know what the something is, to say that the base is probably going to be greater than the actual May minus the 18.3. By the way, two documents. I've been using 18.3 for the based on the revenue focus, because the actual number is 18.27 to 18,272,623. So to me, I round up, that's 18.3. But on this sheet, it's saying 18.2 for business tax. So whatever. So it's a 0.1 either way. So I'm saying, yeah, if we want to, the starting point is my 859.1. Now the question on the table is, do we want to increase that for what Representative Major said about all the extra revenue? And then we go back to discussion on 22 and 23.
okay, let me throw in a starting point for that. We'll take the 959.2. And the revenues to date on business taxes have been up about 30%. So let's say that and that's on the average for the whole 11 months. So let's say that June is going to come up higher than what was planned by 20%. By 20%, you're talking about $25 million. You add 25 million to the 959, and you get 984. 984 puts you in probably around a 3% increase. But if you look at the range that the Senate had, the DRA had, we're in higher.
The Senate, by the way,
Yeah,
Norman,
Mr.
the Senate went to,
But they didn't have the advantage of having the May finals. And so that could have been another $25 million. I would stick, I would have the committee steer towards something that around 20% more for June than what was planned. Seeing that for the whole year, the average was 30%. This would be a conservative. If you want to go to 30% of the 129, let's hear from somebody else. Representative Janine.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was just wondering, and maybe this data is already available, but I mean, obviously one of the big concerns here is how the base figure may drop based on PPP loan or based on refunds from non-taxable PPP loans. Is it possible, if you're not already doing it, to track monthly how much DRA is sending back to businesses or to taxpayer, well, businesses based on the PPP loans? Because that would help us decide how much we might have to lower whatever base we come up with.
We won't start seeing those numbers of any substantial until October or later.
Okay.
And because most of the PPP loans haven't been approved for reimbursement yet. And then that's why in April, we got this slug of money because they couldn't take the advantage of that. They had to pay it knowing that they'd get it back as a refund. And it isn't just PPP loans that we're talking about here. It's the others, the Main Street and all the others, stimulus packages that have added to the revenue that's coming in. Those things are going to be going away. So what Representative Spilsbury said and others, and we need to take all of that into consideration as we go out to 22 and 23. But let's continue on fixing the base for 21.
Representative Major, can I just make a comment or response to Representative Janine? Yeah, sorry. Janine, not going to say it right. Sorry, Representative. So DRA at the end of the month does send out a series of reports, and one of those reports is the refund analysis. So you can see on a monthly basis what's happening with refunds that are being requested and paid out. In addition, there's a report that goes to fiscal committee on a quarterly basis that DRA does on the refunds. So there is material out there available to you to look at what's going on. But to the point Representative Major made, some of the PPP, you probably won't see any of that until sometime into the fall or even later.
Okay.
Representative Almy, followed by Representative Brown.
Thank you. Well, we're trying to deal with the future stuff, which is quite different at this point, and I'm really going to want to get in on that one. But when we're looking at what's coming in the door in June to add on to this, I'm willing to go along with the Senate number if we have to, but if you take the normal performance of June relative to the rest of the year, we come up to 990. Half of that would be an increase of 45. The 20% increase in June over plan of 25 is something also I would be willing to accept at this point. But that is the range in there once we've included what May actually brought in, part of which we know was supposed to be in April.
Okay, does somebody else have a number for FY21 that includes all of June revenue?
Norm, Susan's number is 990. Your number turns out if it at 20% is 985.1. So both tracking much higher than the Senate's 963.2. I just wanted to clarify what those were.
Oh, yeah, sorry, I was, my arithmetic was off. You're right. Representative Major and I are very close.
So that, right, we're saying that, okay. You got me off my plan number. There's good arguments why it would probably be above plan. And so again, at the 20% above plan, Norm, for June, that's 25.86 million. So when you add it to the base, that comes out to 985. The normal plan, it comes out to 985.1 the year. So I guess that's what's on the table now.
All right, does anybody else have another number other than that for 21? Then my suggestion is that we take the difference between 990, 985 and come in with 988. Does anybody have a problem with that? For the base number for 2021, 988.
Can I ask one question though, Norm, of Devin? I know it's early on and it's hard. Well, his numbers he compares to last year, but last year was really anomalous at the beginning of the year. But how are revenues? Is Devin on? Devin on? How the revenues look for the first 6-7 days?
Representative Brahmi, I can answer that if you'd like. We do have a comparison just to last year, and you are correct, last year's anomalies, but business taxes is coming in pretty good so far this year. Just about every day has exceeded last year at this point for business taxes.
Yeah.
If we have a 20 to 25% add-on, that sounds reasonable for a guesstimate based upon the information we know at this point in time.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit higher than what we'd had. So if we plug in what came in for May, remove our estimates and plug in what we came for May, and then keep our June methodology the same, we get a new range of 962.3 to 975.8.
Hold on one second. You get a 962.3
to 975.8. And again, that's replacing our May estimate with May actual and keeping our June methodology the same.
And what we've done is exceeded that by $12 million. Okay. Which is 1.5%, 1.33% or something like that. We're darn close. All right. On the basis of what Melissa has said, the 988 million, should that be changed? That would exceed the DRA's high of 975.8. And that's based upon money in the door as of yesterday. Is that correct, Melissa?
That's based on the end of May.
The end of May, okay. So what did you take for growth over plan for June?
Sure. So the way we had originally modeled was based on historic performance of May and June. But now that we have May, June was for the low, it's 2% ahead of plan. And for the high, it is 13% ahead of plan, which is the average historic performance of revenue for May and June. So if you think it's going to be above that average, then I think your number is fine. We felt comfortable with the average being our high, but 10 to 12 million is not, out of almost $1 billion, is not off all that much.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Representative Arnold.
I think there's a problem with that high methodology now because part of April ended up being in June. I'm not sure which effect that has in which direction. But.
Yeah. And then the 29% I had includes the anomaly. So the average for the 11 months is less than that. If you take the anomaly out, okay, we should drop that down closer to 20%. So maybe the 20% sounds like a reasonable number.
The 20% is 985.
Right. Yes. Representative Tudor, you have your hand up.
I was just curious if the DRA could tell us how well June is tracking. Is June tracking way well above their projection through the first 10 days here, or do they know that?
They had mentioned it, but Melissa, would you respond to that?
Yeah, it's a little, what I did state is that we are tracking ahead of last year. We do know last year was a little bit of an anomalous. It is definitely too early to say what it looks like compared to our numbers. And that's just because the bulk of the revenue, I mean, we're in the 8th and the bulk of the revenue hasn't come in. All I can say is the small amount that has come in has been higher than last year at this point.
Yeah, Chris, would you put up the May revenue forecast sheet, which shows the plan versus what came in?
Yeah, just 1 second. All right.
And go to the, I think, page 4.
Yep.
Okay, and then just reduce it a little bit so we can see the whole thing. Okay. Notice that on page 4, the total business taxes came in 29.1% more than the 11 months of plan. But then in that 29.1% is the $18.2 million. That's the anomaly that should be removed to look at the new percentage. And every 1% is 6.5. So 3. So you.
They took the anomaly out.
We need to take the anomaly out of this percentage.
They already did. See below.
Yeah, no, but not, they took it as one, they took the whole anomaly out, to 30.8 million out at the bottom.
Yeah, but they didn't take it out.
They didn't take it out at the top.
Is that correct?
Sorry, didn't.
Yeah. So the anomaly is in the number of 848.1. And every 1% is 6.5 million. So we're talking about 3%. So it would bring this down to about 26% rather than the 29%. All right, so that still is $988 million, $988 million. So can we have a, I always hate that. Who doesn't agree on that? As far as going forward. Representative Bromley, you don't agree?
All right. I mean, I feel more comfortable with the 985, but 988, fine.
I'd be fine with a 985 also.
I would too.
I think, yeah, let's,
Yeah, 95 then, okay.
Okay, who would not be comfortable with a 985? And you're gonna lower your hand, Representative Bromley?
Oh, my hand's up? Oh, sorry.
Okay, it looks like we move forward one slot. So the base for FY 21 for the House Ways and Means is $985 million. Really need a new worksheet. Now, we have two ways to go. We can do FY 21 all the way down, or we can finish the estimates for the business taxes going across the road to 22 and 23, and then go to meals and rooms.
I say, well, let's finish because we're on a train of thought here.
yeah,
And this is gonna be the most difficult one, so it'd be better if we get it out of the way.
Good. Representative Southwood, do you agree with that?
Yes, my thought is from all the comments I've heard, and I've only been here 10 minutes, I think maybe the estimates would all end up with wider ranges just because of all the unknowns. But I'm still wondering in the end if we would end up in the middle near the same place. So that's just what I've been thinking. I mean, there are more unknowns every time we talk, but some of them would boost it up and some of them would boost it down. So it does sound like the range is wider with all the questions we have right now, but will the middle still be the same as my thought for this morning?
We'll find out. Okay, so we're going to run with 985 million for FY 21. Now we go on to FY 22 on the business taxes.
So that brings us to the norm. That brings us to the discussion of now offline, do we want to adjust down the base or not? Not the base that we're going to show, the base that we're going to move forward from. Whether or not that's anomalous is one way of handling the fact that the base.
Right, and that's going to be a hard number to come by, but you're right, because that's going to start showing up FY 22 is because what's happening now or has happened during this whole year isn't going to continue to be happening as far as economic support from all the stimuluses or the economic attack because of the pandemic is not going to happen. We're hoping next year. So that we have to make an adjustment for that.
The only problem I have, Norm, is I have no idea how to do that.
Nobody does.
Yeah, I mean, there's just, it'd be guesswork on our part. We know it's, this year is artificially high, but, you know, by how much, we don't know. And correct me if I'm wrong, Melissa, I think DRA took the position that these revenues that we just projected are actually pretty real, if you will, in your minds, because you never, when you did you didn't adjust those down at all. Help me out, Melissa. I remember you saying something somewhere along the line. Melissa, can Melissa answer that question, Norm?
Melissa, you have a response?
Sure. Yeah, we've looked at a lot of different items. It's definitely a hard year to predict. But we have taken so far of just doing a growth between 2 and 6%. We have not adjusted down the base. We really are data driven, and we don't have any data to show that there's anomalous revenue that won't continue into the next couple of years. However, if you feel differently, feel free to adjust them. But at this point, we have kept our fiscal year 21 range the same, and then we grew 22 off of that range. It did not make any adjustments down for a base adjustment.
Before we go forward, I want to get some additional input. Representative Murphy, followed by Representative Spilsbury. Representative Murphy.
Thank you. I guess somewhat of a simple question, but maybe a thought about projecting to the future, which is, I think, going to be the most difficult part, as we have all talked about. It would seem like you have the bulk of the information already in for 21, and so those numbers would seem to be appropriate and real. It would also seem difficult to use that base number as the launch pad for projecting 22, 23, given all the confounding factors that we have talked about. Some of them are permanent, and some of them are going to go away, such as the infusion of dollars and the SB3 and PPP effects. So my question is, how inappropriate or realistic would it be to use 21 or 2021 as a asterisk phenomenon, and, as has been mentioned before, not use the 21 numbers as the base in projecting going forward, but actually back up a bit to 19 and 20, and then see if you could extrapolate from those numbers what it might look like based on what the known permanent changes may be, market-based sourcing or credit carry forward that we know about, because obviously many of the adjustments and the confounding factors secondary to COVID are going to be hopefully temporary in nature. So my question would be, and I guess this would be for the, Melissa and Chris or whomever, could you use 19 and 20 as the base in a sense and project out increased percentages going forward? So they're just some of those thoughts. Thank you.
So I guess my response would be, Representative Major and Representative Murphy, is that you can use whatever methodology that the committee feels is appropriate to come up with a base number that you think is the most correct or the best estimate that the committee can make. So if you need to go back and look at 19 and 20 to see what was going on in those 2 years, that's certainly an option. DRA has as Melissa's indicated, they are data driven, so they use information that they can grab out of the system and see what's happened, along with some trending that they also see. So yeah, the answer is it's however the committee decides they want to make an estimate. You could make an estimate of a flat number as well. If you wanted to just say that in 22, we think it's going to be 990 million, and just say that the reason for that is based on all the uncertainties and the pluses and minuses. We don't think that there's really a good base to apply to 22. And we think it's going to fall around this number. So there's whatever methodology the committee would like, or as an individual, you would like to come up with a number to debate with the committee. And I don't know if Melissa wants to add or subtract from what I might have said. I'll quiet down.
Yeah, nope. I think Chris said it perfectly. We're just here to give our thoughts and information on it, but it is 100% the committee's estimates that they get to use, and how they come up with them is their choice. We're just trying to give as much information as we have and what we think. But if you guys feel differently, feel free to choose what you would think would be most accurate.
Okay, Representative Spilsbury.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I very much appreciate Melissa's explanation that they are data-driven and therefore limited in terms of how to approach this in the way that we would. So we have freedom. Maybe this goes somewhat in the same direction from a different angle as Representative Murphy. If you look at the Senate's projection, they came out for FY22 with a 3.57% increase. So a little bit below the middle of DRA's 2 to 6% range. If we just blindly applied that, which frankly I think is what the Senate has done, to our new base of 985 for FY21, that would lead us to a figure for FY22 of 1020.16. In other words, $1,020,000,000. And I think that just illustrates that that approach is leading us astray.
Mhm.
So I'm wondering, rather than focusing on FY20, on the new figure of 985 for FY21, let's go back to our March 18th projection for FY22, which was 847.7. The commonality here with Representative Murphy's thinking is that our 847.7 was in fact based largely on what had occurred in 19 and 20.
Mm-hmm.
So why don't we ask ourselves, as squishy as the information might be, whether there's grounds to raise 847.7. How brief are these anomalies? When will they stop recurring?
Well, can I react to that, Norm? Or is it somebody else's hand up first?
Yeah, but we have two other people want
Okay,
to
let them go first. I'm sorry.
speak first. Representative Ames, followed by Representative Almy.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, as I approach this, I see FY22 in a different light than FY23. I think in FY22, there'll be federal money still pouring into our New Hampshire economy. The ARPA money is about to be distributed, and that's a lot of money. And so I'm optimistic in terms of revenue going forward for the next 12 months, basically because of that, subject to the adjustment for refunds that we've talked about, the PPP refunds. And if I were projecting, I think what I would favor is taking the new number that we're in the process of developing, well, for business taxes, taking the new number we've talked about for FY21 and taking out of it the expected PPP refund and then growing it perhaps at the same growth rate that the DRA had used, 3.57%, if I have that right. That would give us a number for FY22, and maybe I should stop there. I think the idea of trying to identify a base that's appropriate to use as the economic stimulus disappears is a really difficult one. The idea of looking back in time, looking back to where we were when we were doing this estimating work earlier this year, may be helpful. But I would separate the two fiscal years. I guess that's my contribution.
And if you do that, the PPP effect is 25.4 million in FY22, and then we would reduce our base number by that amount. It'd be 959.6.
Right.
It's good reason, because that's gonna happen to that amount of money anyway. I had identified Representative Almy and then followed by Representative Bromley.
Thank you. The ARPA money, which is, it's a huge amount of money coming in. The question is, where is it actually going to be used? A lot of it is on up to subdivisions of the state. A lot of that is going to be infrastructure kinds of things that could but may not permanently help the economy and make us grow faster. We can't tell yet. And a lot of it may get used for on most of our businesses in the state of New Hampshire, since almost all of our businesses are what the federal government calls small. So it's really difficult. We can't possibly disentangle what that stimulus is going to leave us with in 23 as it's reducing, but as it's also adding infrastructure in our state for the roads to be better, for broadband to be better, for that kind of thing. If that actually works, that would be a stimulus in itself, which would be showing up mostly in 23 and 24 and after that. What I wanted, I think we should take out the PPP money. And I think that we should also take out something for the single sales factor unless we can get some idea from DRA about whether they are far enough along that they think they're successful in finding enough money outside the state to replace what we're going to lose inside the state. And I think that we ought to take off a bit more than the PPP money because people got Main Street money and a whole bunch of other things that we don't know about because the governor wasn't telling people actually what it was done with it. Thanks.
Okay, Representative Romney.
I'm going to take a buy as I'm thinking
Okay,
about this.
if you are, if we take FY 21 and remove the PPP money, you're down to $959.6 million. And then if you go to the mid-range, what the DRA came up with, 2 to 6%, and say it's 4% growth, at 4% growth on that, you would have $998 million for FY 22, which would be, it exceeds FY 21, but it makes by $13 million. But to me, I forgot who recommended that.
Norm, that puts us right at what the Senate is at. They're at 997.8.
Yeah, it does. It does.
You didn't know.
Miracles
that.
happen.
That's the point thing. He didn't realize that.
To me, that makes sense. I mean, you could do many different things, but to grab something that you can understand, and we do know that we're going to lose that $25.4 million, maybe even more. So we need to remove that from our base and then grow that new base by, if you go up by 4%, and you come with the Senate numbers. You want to, that's my number. Somebody else want another number, and reason why.
Mr. Chairman, could we ask the DRA whether they've got any further guidance on what single sales factor is going to do to us? Because they've killed that bill again, and
yeah, we haven't
it's
gone,
going to happen.
Yeah, we haven't gone into the changes to current law. Yeah, I'd rather stick with current law, and then after we get through with the current law.
But it is current law. They put it in current law in the last budget. But I'm just remembering now, it's only going to affect us in 23, so.
Okay, you're right. It'll be registered in 23. And we're doing 22 right now. Does anybody have a different methodology or a different number for FY 22 And let me just repeat that again. We take the FY21 number, reduce it by the PPP amount of refunds, which is 25.4 million, come up with 959.6 million, and then raise that by 4%, the middle of the growth range, and we come up with $998 million, which within $200,000 of the Senate number. It's amazing. Are we okay with that number?
I'd second that number.
Yeah, I do too.
James, who's not okay with that number? Okay, going once, twice, and three times, 998 million for FY22. Now we go to FY23. FY23, we should be able to work off. FY23, we also need to take into consideration that there's going to be an extra $44 million of potential refund due to PPP.
Mr. Chairman, is that 44? Is that 44 minus 20, whatever it was, 25? Because we took it off of the base before.
That's in the, right. It should be 19 or 18.6.
Wait.
The difference.
No, I mean, this is what the, there's going to be a lot more refunds and unless quarterly payments than the prior year. I mean, I wouldn't subtract the two. That 44 million is what it is.
It is, but we already removed the first one, the 25 from the base.
Oh, I see what you mean. Let me think about this. Yeah.
So it's the difference between those is when it comes to small numbers, it's tough.
18.6, Norm.
18.6, thank you. So we would reduce the base. We would reduce the 998 by 18.6. And then put a growth factor on.
Mr. Chairman, single sales factor.
$20 million. Yes. Chris, help me out. Would we consider that in the changes?
So if you look at the screen now, you see where the changes to current law are. You go down to the 5th row up, it's payroll protection program. You have 25, the Senate assumed $25.4 million in 22 and $44 million in 23 reduction to your revenues.
Right.
So they're already accounting for that. So they developed a base just as you guys did last back in March. And then you go and you make reductions based on changes to law that's being proposed this session.
Okay.
So one of the changes that the Senate had compared to the House is the single sales. The House language was included to delay that. So there was a positive $20 million gain carried on the surplus statement. The Senate removed that language. So there's no adjustment. There's no positive gain. And then you can see that right here.
Right. And so, okay. So that's in their numbers, the 20 million.
Yeah, so they didn't give them, because they removed the position of the House, which was to delay the single sales. They didn't take credit for $20 million. They actually lose the $20 million in the final number.
So
But
their final number of
excuse me, right here.
1029.6.
Their final number becomes 2801.6 and 22 after they make all the adjustments that you see on this page that's on your screen right now.
Right, but their business taxes that they come up with for final for 23, 1029.6 takes that into account.
So similar to how the House did it back in March, they made estimates and then growth to those estimates and debated why they thought the numbers should be what they are to go with current law. And that's what you have before you. That's the 963 and 21, the 997 and 22, and the 1029 and 23. And then the Senate Ways and Means considered some of the adjustments to current law that were contained in House Bill 2. And that was this page here.
Right.
And so that nets against the revenue. So if you were to go through and grab all the business related adjustments, you would apply that against the base number up above and come up with a new number.
Right.
But what they're saying is that they're not going to lose any money off of the single sales factor being in place.
What they're saying is that it's already been considered in the base numbers because that's current law. The House position was you were delaying it, so you were going to gain $20 million.
Because we delayed it.
Right.
But their position is that we're not going to lose anything from single sales factor.
No, that's their position is it's already been considered in their base numbers.
Yeah.
Wasn't.
Because it was, but no, Susan, it was our bill. Our bill, we passed our bill in the House that would delay the single sales factor. They voted that down. So at the time we did our estimates, we said we were going to gain $20 million because of our bill, delaying single sales factor, because we thought
And they did their estimates.
sales factor is going to cost us $20 million.
Yeah.
So I understand now what you're saying, Chris. Yeah, the 20 million, it was there because we thought the Senate was going to pass our bill, or that was the assumption.
Yep.
Did not pass our bill. So it went away.
And they didn't.
It went away, but we still lose money with single sales factor. And I thought 20 million was a minimum that we.
Okay, and they didn't have to consider it because they considered it when they did their base numbers, because it was current law for them.
Correct.
Representative Spilsbury, followed by Representative Ames.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So understanding what's just been discussed, we're groping for the current law figure. So the PPP refunds are dealt with separately on those adjustments for change in law. But that still brings us back to Representative Ames' point, which is that we've got to view FY22 and FY23 differently from the perspective of how much longer stimulus, particularly with the new flow of ARPA, is going to be goosing things. So I think the case has been clearly made that there's still going to be a strong stimulus effect in FY22, unless we believe that that's also true for FY23. We should not just simply escalate again. And in this case, it looks like the Senate has bumped 23 over 22 by 3.19%. So I don't know how to come up with that number, but it does seem to me there should be a tapering of the stimulus impact coming towards us by FY23.
So I think as your committee heard, the stimulus money is available until 24, federal fiscal year 24. And if it's encumbered, the entities may be able to have it for a longer period. So I believe there was some of that consideration when the Senate was looking at their 23 figure. But that would be certainly a discussion at any committee, a conference, or with the chairs of the two Ways and Means committees.
Okay, may I go now?
Representative Ames.
Yeah, I agree with much of what's just been said. But before we jump into what the growth factor should be for FY23, I think we need to wrap up what we're growing from. And I think we agree that the new base that we set for FY23 is the starting point, that we need to take out of it the PPP money. And then the question raised by Representative Almy is still on the table, because do we think that going to the single sales factor will have an appreciable net loss or revenue loss effect? And if we do, that's current law. We're dealing with current law here. That's all. Then should we take that out so we get the base that we want to use for applying the growth factor that we need to identify, which I think, consistent with what Representative Spilsbury just said, has to be lower than FY22, but I'm really in the dark as to how much lower. Much of what Representative Almy said is absolutely true. There may be, it's maybe a different kind of flow of that money into the economy that may be showing its impact a little later. There's that aspect, and we really don't know that. We also, I think, have to be informed by what Chris Shea said about ARPA money. It doesn't have to be spent until, what is it, 4 years out? So it's a really hard nut to crack on the growth factor, but I see it as lower than 3 point whatever that we were using in 22. So the first thing to me anyway is putting behind us the question of the sales of single sales factor.
Yeah, the ARPA money, if it's committed by December of 24, you have until December of 26 to
even further on. Yeah.
As far as the sales factor, and Chris, bear me out on this. When the Senate came up with their $1.029 billion for revenue for FY23, I would have felt that they took that into consideration.
It wasn't explicitly discussed. They went with their current law estimates, and I think the assumption was that when they were looking at the base numbers that were provided, that was weaved into it. But they did have a robust discussion, as your committee has, on that issue.
Therefore, Chris, they assume that there's no impact either way going to single sales factor.
Probably.
I think that's probably their position, that this is revenue neutral to them.
And I can't suggest their position to you. I don't know. I mean, it would be all speculative on my part.
I'm speculating that since they really haven't discussed it, they went through their methodology as they normally would, assuming that there's no impact on the revenue because of single sales factor. Our position is that we still suspect that there's going to be some downward revenue, but that's something we need to discuss. If we still want to hold on to that, our position on that. And but we can't show that in the surplus statement anymore because it is now current law that we're projecting, which includes single sales factor. So we would have to adjust a base somewhere or our percentages or something to reflect that $20 million, if you will. So that's all.
Okay, let me try something. We came up with $998 million FY22. We know we're going to have to reduce the base by $44 million because of PPP in FY23. But in there is already the 24 point something. So I would assume that we would have to reduce the 998 by $18.6 million. If we do that, our base for FY23 would be 979.4. And if you use 4%, it would end up being $1,018,000,000.6 $1.018.6 billion, which would be about $11 million less than what the Senate has.
Mr. Chairman,
Representative Almy.
we in our committee agreed that first, it depends, how much we're going to lose depends entirely on how much of our huge businesses, the ones that pay most of our business profits tax, are on manufacturers. The manufacturers are going to stop paying BPT. It was set at 20 million back when we thought we were going to get a lot less money in general. If we don't take out at least something for the loss through single sales factor, then we're agreeing with the Senate that it's revenue neutral. And maybe you want to do that.
Unfortunately, we have no idea what the total loss is going to be. But we had settled on $20 million. It could be more, and probably the possibility of being less isn't that great. So at this point, since everything's up in the air, let's go back. We still have a starting point of $998 million. We need to adjust for the PPP. And that would be 18.6. That brings us to 979.4. And if we say the growth rate in 23 from 22 is 4%, that's the number I came up with, 1.018.
But that's
Now,
leaving
if we
now.
put the $20 million off from that, then we would be 990.
98. Wait a minute.
Yeah, no, I'm looking at it, back at 998, right?
Wait, 979.4. That's after backing out the 18.6.
Yeah.
Then times 1.04. That's yeah, 1,018. Right. So still under, right? Well under the Senate.
And if we took $20 million off that, we end up with 998.
998.6, call it. Yeah.
And we aren't growing the 20 million by 2 years of enormous growth.
Representative Spilsbury.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm not sure exactly where you ended there, but when we've taken out the incremental PPP and got to 979.4, or whether we adjust that back to 998, I would refrain from going higher personally. I just think that we should resolve uncertainty conservatively and maybe level it.
Well, taking out the $20 million does that.
Yeah, but I'm saying 998 rather than $1,029,000 or something in between.
I agree. We need to account for the single sales factor. It's how much, and I think the conservative point is $20 million, and that would show there'd be no growth from one year to the other. But there's a reason for that, because we're giving out a lot of refunds, and then number two, going to single sales factor, a lot of people not paying the business profits tax now.
I wonder what the number would be if we went to 3% growth instead of 4%.
3%. Is 1.08.8. 1 billion.
That's before the 20 million.
And that's before the 20 million. And then when you take the 20 million out, then you're at 988.7.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm more comfortable going in that direction than at the 4% growth rate for the reasons I said before.
Okay.
And it could be between 3 and 4. I'd like to see it a lower growth rate than FY22.
So that came out to be 988.7.
Can we just split the difference, Norm? Can we split the difference?
Hold on a minute, because we still have a couple of hands.
Oh, okay.
Representative Gamaro.
Thank you. Very basic question, but I don't understand why we're not taking the whole 44 million out for PPP in year 2023. Can someone just explain that to me?
Well, when you take the 18.6 and the 25.4, it adds up to 44.
I understand that. It just seems like it's what's been estimated that we're going to be giving back each year, and it's not a cumulative thing. So it seems
So
like that should be.
Not each year. The 25.4 is for 22. Then it goes to 44. Then the next year, I believe it goes to a smaller number, and then it tapers to almost nothing.
Right.
But
And
is that a chunk of revenue that we're returning to businesses each year?
Chris, you want to answer that?
Well, it's cumulative. I'm sorry. Yeah.
So I believe Representative Gamarlo is correct. The information that you had was that it was going to be a $25.4 million hit in 22.
Right.
And then in 23, it was 44, and then it tapered down to 19.2, 4.1, and down to 1.7 by 2028 for a total impact of $99.4 million.
So we should be taking the whole 44?
I believe that would be the correct way to do it, unless Melissa jumps in and tells me I'm giving you incorrect information.
The 25 in the base.
Melissa, would you comment on it, please?
Sure. And I'll also have Carolyn jump in if I misspeak, because she's a little bit of an expert on this part. I believe because you took the 25 out of the base, it's the difference between the 25 and the 44. The 44 is compared to 21. So if you would have just done the 4% growth and then taking the 25 out after, like it is on the surplus statement,
Got it.
then it would be the 44. But because you took the 25.4 out of the 22 base before you grew 23, you're already accounting for part of that. So you just do the 18.6.
Got it.
That makes sense.
Oh, I get it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Melissa.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Melissa. Hey, we've got all the important people here. Okay. So then, if we take,
I think Representative Spilsbury has his hand up again.
okay, I'm sorry, Representative Spilsbury.
If I do, I'm sorry, I didn't lower it.
Okay, then. So if we take the 998 and remove the 18.6 because we already had removed 25.4, we get 979.4, which is 1.018. If we grow it at 3% and remove the $20 million, we'll end up with $988.7 million. How does the committee feel with that?
I think I'd like to split the difference between your original 998.6 and the 988.7.
And I'd like to point out that if we take the 20 million out at the end, the 20 million has grown as those companies have produced more profit.
So Representative Bromley recommending that we split it and go to 993.7.
Yep, 993.7. Yep.
Representative Major, Representative Schamberg.
Representative Schamberg.
I have a question for Representative Bromley.
Yes, sir.
What will be the effect if inflation continues to grow on the 3 to 4% outlook that we're thinking these businesses are going to move forward?
Inflation. Well, if it's inflation, it means their prices are going up. I don't have an answer to that question. We are faced with potential of inflation here. Basically, the old adage of too many dollars chasing too few goods with the much revenue into the system right now is putting pressure on inflation. There's no question. I don't know the answer to your question, though.
A follow-up question, Mr. Chairman, to the DRA. Melissa, Representative Schamberg here. Has there been any data that you've been able to gather in comparison with single sales factor to what we're presently in current law doing?
I'm actually going to pass that off to Carolyn. She's the
Okay, all right.
factor expert.
Morning, Representatives. Carolyn Lear, Assistant Commissioner at the Department of Revenue. So just to back up a step or two to remind this country, the reason why we're unable to estimate the impact of single sales factor at the moment is because of the recent implementation of market-based sourcing, which will result in really changing who our taxpayers are in some instances. Market-based sourcing was effective on 1/1/21. Yeah, I'm sorry, 1/1/20, I'm sorry. And those returns would have been filed for the first time this spring. But as you know, given the pandemic, the delayed due date, and the just huge number of taxpayers that we have filing on extension, those we just don't have that return data yet that we would need to sort of take a look at our new taxpayer base and then make an estimate on single sales factor. Additionally, of course, you know, our largest taxpayers are fiscal year taxpayers, and their returns are even more delayed. And so we really won't have a sufficient number of returns for probably at least 6, maybe 12 months to really come up with a good number for you folks on single sales factor.
And single sales factor was effective when?
I believe it was 1/1/20, but now I am second guessing myself.
Single sales factor is 1/1/22. January.
Yes, but the market-based sourcing change, which is really the sort of root of why we don't have great data for you on single sales factor, I believe was 1/1/20. So we just don't have those returns in any meaningful number yet to tell you, to then run the single sales factor analysis on those new taxpayers to come up with an accurate analysis.
So do you know enough to give us an idea of where the vector would be heading?
I think that's a tough question. I have up our most recent analysis, which I believe you've all seen, which gives you sort of a picture of what it would have been in tax years 2014 through 2018. In 2 of those years, single sales factor actually results in more revenue, but in 3 years, it results in substantially less revenue. So if you're looking at the average, you're probably looking at a reduction in revenue attributable to single sales factor.
And when do you feel that would happen?
The effective date of single sales factor is 1/1/22. So you would start to see that that impact in estimate payments being filed in the spring of 22.
Mr. Chairman, could I just ask Carolyn another question?
Go ahead, Representative Almy.
Yes, for market-based sourcing, you were having to go and find the businesses outside the state that now under market-based sourcing is supposed to be paying us money that weren't paying us money before. Do you have any idea whether you're finding enough of them to make up the money on that change, which might give us some idea of whether we could find the money from outside to make up the money on the single sales factor change?
Far too early currently to have been to be conducting audit activities on market-based sourcing. We really have to wait to see if taxpayers voluntarily file, and then we won't start looking for them until they don't voluntarily file.
Okay, at this point in time, because of the information that was conveyed to us, we're not sure how much it's going to impact us. We do know that it's going to impact us negatively, and that will start up in the estimates in 2022. And we have used $20 million as a negative impact. I don't see how we could come up with a number any better than that, because we're really taking something out of the air, sort of, from what I hear. So I would go along with the 20 million and hopefully that we're right. Representative Tucker has her hand up.
Yes, I wanted to comment on the topic of inflation. Everything I've been reading agrees that there is an inflationary trend at the moment, but many experts believe it will subside by the end of the year. I think that the topic of inflation has become a very partisan one, and probably better to something for us to avoid getting involved in right on these estimates for that reason.
Representative Brandon.
I remind everybody, Carolyn, the market-based sourcing really only impacts service companies, correct? And so it's not the full population of all companies that it's going to impact, but someone who provides a service to, and it depends on where the service is being provided. Current law was like, let's use the Alatizio example. I was brokering stuff to Maine. He was paying our tax. He was paying the New Hampshire tax, not the Maine tax. But then Maine put a market-based sourcing in that made him pay the tax twice. He had to pay the tax to Maine as well. So we changed that. So now with market-based sourcing, it's Aldo Tizio no longer pays the tax, but the person that he's providing the service to will be taxed in that state. So the receiver of the service is going to pay the tax, not the provider of the service. So is that correct?
Representative, you're correct that market-based sourcing only impacts the sale of services, of intangibles. And I would just modify your last statement a bit. It doesn't impact who pays the tax. It just impacts where the tax is paid. So in the Maine, New Hampshire example, previously New Hampshire would have taxed a service provider in New Hampshire if they were located in New Hampshire. That's a bit of an oversimplification, but for our purposes works. And now we wouldn't tax that revenue because we would instead look to the location of the provider's customer, which in your example was Maine.
And that's Susan, Representative Almey's thing is that that's still at issue, is that we have to find these companies that are receiving the service to be able to send them a tax bill.
Exactly.
Okay, we know that we have a lot to learn about market-based sourcing and single sales factor, what effect it's going to have on our revenue. We don't have enough information yet to know exactly what's going to happen. Our discussion is, do we use the $20 million or do we have some other amount?
Representative Ames has his hand.
I'm getting there. And so that's where we are at this point in time. Representative Ames.
Yeah, thank you. I would take the $20 million. I think that's the best we got for the deduct. I think we were at a point in the discussion before we dove into a single sales factor where we had two possible numbers in front of us. And one was a 4% growth factor on a base that excluded the PPP money. And then after getting a number, we subtracted 20 million. That's what I remember. And
Right.
then
Okay.
there was a suggestion that we go halfway to something. I don't remember what the something was.
It was $993.7 million, and that's using a 3% growth factor.
Okay, to that one. And what I'd like to know, if our math gurus can tell us, is going to that midpoint implies what growth factor? It's not 4%, it's not 3%, it's somewhere in between.
Isn't it halfway in between? 3.5.
Right, so it should be 1.35, 1.035.
Can I jump in?
My,
Norm, can I jump in, please?
yes.
Yeah, I think you misspoke. It's your original number was 998.6.
Yes.
Representative Ames's number was 988.7 at the 3%. So the midpoint was 993.7.
So I would assume that would be 3.5%.
Yeah.
Let's assume that. Yeah.
Does anybody have a different number? Are we okay with $993.7 million? With the explanation that we use the base of 2022, reduced it by $18.6 million because of the PPP, and expanded it by 3.5%, and removed $20 million because of the single sales factor is going to continue its current law. All right, anybody disagree with that?
I think it's too high.
I like the approach, but it just pushes me beyond where I think this moderate range should be in. It really does, but I'll support the
Okay. Who won't support the committee? All right, now, Chris, you have the numbers.
I got 985 for 21, 998 for 22, and 993.7 for 23.
Okay.
And your numbers for 22 and 23 already account for the PPP.
Say that again.
Your numbers for 22 and 23 already account for the PPP?
Yes. And 20.
So does that put us above the Senate?
So the Senate base number doesn't back out the $25.2 million or the $44.0 million. So yes, I believe it puts you higher than the Senate.
But now all we have to do is go to the changes and see where we stand.
Yep.
Which let's just take a quick look at the next sheet, which shows the changes. Ones that would affect.
So you've accounted for the payroll protection program.
Yeah.
The Senate doesn't do that until after, so that they have a negative adjustment of 25.4 and 22, and a negative adjustment of $44 million in 23 from their base number.
Well, we didn't have an adjustment when we did it in March.
Correct.
Right. So we picked up, and the Senate used the numbers that we worked with the DRA, and we're using them now with our new numbers. Okay.
So
the sweat reduction is the same. The historic racing is the same.
Yep.
And we took care of single sales factor. Everything else is the same going to the top, except for the additional DRA auditor.
Right. The Senate Finance Committee did not add the two positions that the House Finance Committee had recommended, which then would impact the $3 million in revenue that was on the surplus statement for 23.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Tudor, shouldn't the 20 million come out of the single sales factor on this sheet?
Oh, it's going to come out.
No, because it's in current law.
Right.
But we've adjusted for it in our estimate.
Out of ours.
Yeah, we have to take the 20 million out. Because
Yeah.
that was based on the fact that we thought the Senate was going to pass our bill. They did not pass our bill.
Yeah.
So that
So
doesn't.
that, when we take that 20 million out, you won't see any differences going above the payroll protection program until you get to the top. And that was the auditors. So we would be in agreement with the Senate on all of those things. The other thing where we're different is the Senate came up with an amendment to House Bill 2, which sets the meals and rooms tax, takes 30% after paying administrative costs and some other thing, sending 30% to a special dedicated fund managed by the Treasury and not managed by the Finance Committee, and to be distributed to the towns and cities, which is about $50 million more over the biennium than they do now. And so we would have to get an agreement on that.
Chairman, the result of this is that we're going to have an abrupt dip in the reporting of the Meals and Rooms Fund. It's going to be at 70% of what it was before. So even though it's not a total 30% that's going to the municipalities, the way they're handling this, if we do this dedicated fund, is that most of 30% of the rooms and meals revenue that we've been counting is going to disappear.
Right now, we send, I think, around 20-something%, is it, Chris?
The percentage varies from year to year. So the Meals and Rooms distribution has been suspended or controlled for the last decade by the legislature. So in statute, the intention was to let it grow to 40% over time. And there was a $5 million cap per year in the growth of that fund or that distribution. But since the fiscal year 2010, the legislature has decided a figure that it would appropriate and that would be distributed due to various reasons. This year, the governor's proposed budget was to increase it to $73.6 million in 22 and $78.3 million in 23. So he was going, and he didn't suspend the language that allowed for that growth. The Senate plan was to say, let's move that all off into a restricted fund. Let's make the amount equal to 30%, take it out of the budget debate so that the communities would be getting the distribution without it becoming something that budget negotiators would tweak in order to get dollars that they might want to save or to spend.
We don't see the full effect of that because we're already transferring around 25%. Could be 21 or something like that. So it's be the difference between that and the 30%.
Yep.
And then, so that's why over the course of the biennium, they're going to be getting an extra $50-something million distributed to the towns and cities.
Mr. Chairman, because of the dedicated fund provision that they put in on the monthly revenue focus starting in July, I believe, maybe August, is going to set 30% less revenue in rooms and meals than there was before, minus that 5 cents that the governor put in.
Right, because now it's taken out and no longer goes through the budget process. It will not go into the general fund.
Can I speak to this?
Yes, Representative Ames.
I think this is an important question, but it's not directly related to the task that's before us. We need. Right now, we're looking at a picture that shows the education and general fund combined. So we're seeing pretty much the whole picture, but not quite, because there are a few things that have been sent off outside of this picture that we're looking at. And now we're talking about another send off of a big chunk of money to another fund. And to me, the answer to this problem is to widen the frame of our picture as we go forward. And I think it's a different discussion, but when we are estimating revenues, we're going to have to look at the rooms and meals tax as a whole and then divvy it up, just as we do with the business tax right now. And part of the divvying is to a new fund, which I hope will become part of the picture we're looking at when we do this whole thing, and is done in such a way that people can see continuity from before the establishment of a separate fund for meals and room local sharing, whatever you call it. And after. It's just a matter of doing it right. I don't know whether it can be done administratively or whether it's going to require legislation, but I hope we can try to do it in a way that allows people to see what's happened over a period of years and also allows us to do our job.
Right, we're still going to have to estimate the total meals and rooms tax, knowing that the rooms and meals tax that we collect for car rental gets taken off and sent to the Education Trust Fund. Now we have the 30% of what's left after administrative costs and the distribution for the Education Trust Fund. 30% of what's left then goes to the special dedicated fund handled by a treasurer. And then what's left goes to the general fund. But we need to know the total number. Right. That's another exercise. But when you look at this table, what we see now is that the first line, the Senate took out the addition of the two auditors, and therefore we will not see that revenue. And then everything else, and then also they took out the single sales factor. But everything down to the payroll protection, we're okay. If you don't agree with me, let me know. We're okay with this. Now the payroll protection, we're okay with that because we're going to use the same 25.4 and the 44 in our revenue estimates. The dedicated fund for the 30% of the meals and rooms, Chris, we need to have broken down the total meals and rooms tax, and then what gets siphoned off, and then what's left figures out to 30%.
So the negative 92.6 and 95.6 is the estimated amount that would come out of the base meals and rooms up above, which allows for the transfer to the Education Trust Fund. So that's considered in the formula.
Yeah,
so
I thought the 30% came after they removed the distribution to the car rental.
Yes.
Education, and after they removed the administrative costs.
Yep.
Okay.
And it's based on the prior year's revenue.
Yes.
So your distribution in 22 is based on your 21 revenue.
Yes. Okay.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I think we're double counting, or rather double deducting on the payroll protection program at this point. And it would be simpler if we agreed to that the House would agree to put 25 and 44 in to 22 and 23. And then we added those back into our revenue estimates, because you're going to have to be going back and forth with the Senate about, we had the 25 over there and you have it over here.
Right.
Yeah. All right.
Can I jump in? I thought we were using those as just a way of reducing the base, for lack of anything else to use, to estimate what we thought the revenues were going to be. Because I think we should show it the way it's showing here. Then, so it's going to seem like a double count here, but a double reduction. But I think this is the proper way of dealing with this. So 25.4 and the 44 is coming out, but
I agree,
what
Patrick.
to do then, because if we stay with this, are we saying that we're going to increase what we came up with by 25.4 and 44? I don't think.
Hey, Chris,
Yes.
can you square us away on this?
So I agree that with Representative Almy in the sense that you're going to have some confusion when you try to present this to the Senate, because they're going to be looking at the current revenue number. And they're going to say, our number is 997.8 and your number is 998. So we agree. Just say. Well, what they may not know and may not get explained is that you've already accounted for the PPP, and then it may end up with a double reduction because it would be showing up lower in the adjustments for changes that are being made to current legislation. So, I mean, it depends on how this is going to be presented to the Senate Ways and Means and the debate or discussion that's going to occur. I understand what you're trying to do in terms of, bring your base down, which you've kind of adjusted, and then you can say, okay, add the 25 back to the 98, make a negative adjustment below.
Yes.
You get to the same place. But or you can leave it the way you have it, and then you can just be clear when it's explained to the committee, the Senate members, that you've already accounted for the PPP in your number. They have not, but you have.
If I could, these are one-time payments. And so maybe it's a lot easier to understand them in the surplus statement.
I agree. I think it should be in the surplus statement.
Yeah.
Which is what these figures in the second sheet.
Yeah.
That's where they go. Those all end up in the surplus statement. That's where these figures came from. So if you were to do a house adjustment, because you've already included or taken care of it up above, I don't believe we would still show 0 for payroll protection down here.
Well, the only reason there's 0 there is because we hadn't gotten that far.
Right.
Understood. But now you've created a base number of 998 and 22 and 993 and 0.7 and 23. That's already accounted for the 25.4 million of the payroll protection in 22. And then you adjusted because you reduced your base in 22, you reduced 23 by 18.6.
Yeah, I can see if we were purists and used current law, we wouldn't be showing that adjustment on the other sheet. Our base numbers would be higher. And then on here, the payroll protection, you'd see the 25.4 and the 44, the adjustment. Because it's still not current law yet, even though we passed it in the Senate. Has the governor signed it?
I don't know. I don't know.
So it's not current law yet. So we need to actually show it in our revenue numbers and then adjusted by putting it on the payroll protection changes to current law.
Mr. Chairman, we've got a long-term policy of when a bill passes the House or the Senate, the House or the Senate can include it as current law in the budget stuff.
If that's the case. Chris, I'm gonna rely on you being the accountant. What's the proper method?
I would suggest, even if it's signed into law before a committee of conference is held, that you still treat it as if it's not in your base current law numbers, that you have it separated out on a surplus statement.
Okay.
And that way you have a place to go to look back on to see what did you adjust for. If it's buried in the number, the base number up above, or the current law number up above, it will be harder to trace back what you accounted or what you estimated would be the impact of the change.
Let us do it that way.
So you would add 25.4 million back to 22 and 18.6 million back to 23, and then show a negative adjustment below at
Yes.
25.4 and 44.
Yes. And then that would then everything can be shown in the bottom line. It'd be the sum of your current and the adjustments.
Mr. Chairman, I've had my hand up to try and weigh in on this.
Representative Spilsbury.
Yeah, thank you. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we're going astray.
Yes.
This looks like a double adjustment, but it's not. The purpose of the offsets based on law changes is to refund monies already collected in FY21 and already in our FY21 estimate. The purpose of reducing the base for the purpose of growing the 22 and 23 numbers is to make sure that those funds that will be refunded next year are removed from the base. We need to do both.
I actually agree with that, by the way. That's where I was trying to go with this.
Yes, that's what Representative Abrami was saying, and I agree with it.
You know, but you said it more eloquently. I think we subtracted, we put in the surplus statement the minus 25 and the minus 44 and keep our revenues the way they are as we project.
Okay.
Is that what you're saying too, Representative Spilsbury?
Yeah, that's precisely what I'm saying. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
And I second that.
Okay, and Chris, are you all right with that?
I'm fine with whatever the committee wants to do. That's fine. It makes sense. If you just need to make sure that it gets communicated if there's any confusion on what's happening. That's all.
All right.
But the suggestion is that you've made your adjustments. You're going to have a number of 998 and 22, a number of 993.7 and 23, and that you would agree that you should show on a surplus statement a negative adjustment of 25.4 and 22 and negative 44 and 23.
Fine.
I'm asking. I just want to make sure that's what I'm understanding. Representative Spilsbury and Representative Abrami and Ames.
That captures it exactly, Chris. Thank you.
Yep. Thank you.
Okay. Then the only other change is in the last line before the bold, is the additional transfer to the Education Trust Fund. You want to do the brief explanation on that, Chris?
Yeah. So the Lottery Commission purchased the building that it currently is in. And so they were paying a mortgage on that. They got permission from the legislature, I think 2 budgets ago, to do that. The thought was, and a section has been added to House Bill 2 to actually pay off that mortgage. And as a result, the mortgage payments of about $200,000 each year would then be transferred into the Education Trust Fund instead of being used to pay the mortgage. So that's where that adjustment comes from.
All right. If there's no other.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question.
Representative Elmer.
So the House is not going to argue about not including those 2 high-level auditors, which I think we need badly once we have market-based sourcing and single sales factor and need to find people outside of the state.
Representative Almy, I don't know what the House's position will be as it comes to the auditor positions. The House position was to include them. The Senate position is to remove them. So the committee of conference would work that out, and I don't know where that will end up.
We'll have to argue for that.
Right, right. And
Yes,
and again,
please.
I make no suggestions on whose position will be negotiated and where you'll end up.
Yeah, if we want to maintain our revenues, we've got to get those auditors. Representative Spilsbury, and then I want to get back to the base revenues for the rest of them. We still have a ways to go. Representative Spilsbury.
If my hand's up, again, I'm finished.
Okay.
Okay.
Can you go back to the General Education Trust Fund estimates? There
Yep.
we go. Now we want to go to meals and rooms tax.
Now that you got rid of the easy ones, we'll go to the hard ones.
Yeah.
So the amount you see in 21 is again reflective of what was collected through April, and then estimating what May and June would bring in, and that's how you get to the 320.4 million in 21. And then in 22, the Senate went to 342.8, and then in 23, 359.9. And you could see it's very similar to what the House had. The feeling or the discussion was around there's some pent up desire to get out, but that will fade away pretty quickly as some of the stimulus money that individuals received starts to diminish, and other, that pent up demand diminishes, I guess, for lack of a better statement. So that's how they ended up at the, slightly ahead in 22, and then they come down just slightly below the House in 23 for the meals and rooms estimates.
Mr. Chair, can I start?
Representative Abrami.
So through May, meals and rooms revenue was 289.1. Subtract 1.6 for the anomalies from last year, so that we're down to 287.5. So now the question is again, what do we think is going to come in this month? When we say this month, it really is what was the activity last month with this,
Yep.
which is important because it's really accelerating. We saw that in May's revenue, which was really April's revenue, was 27 million. It almost hit target for the first time, since the pandemic. So if we had the if we take a conservative view and say, well, this month will be the same as last month, that'll bring us up to 314.5 now, which is 5.9 million below the Senate number. I have a feeling it may be above the 27 of May, the May number. So that's where we got to discuss, how much do we think is going to come in May? Last month, 27 million came in, and that was really for April. So we're really saying, well, how much is going to come in May? That would be revenue in June. So, and all I know is things are opening up big time. So I guess I don't have a problem with the Senate base number, but that base number would be 5.9 million more than last month's number, the 27 that came in. So I'll use that as a starting point for discussion.
If you just take what's come in to date through the end of May, 289.1, as Representative Brahman mentioned, and the plan is 32.2. You add those two together, it's 321.3, which is within a few $100,000 of the Senate. Now the 321.3, which is the plan. Last month for May, it just about came into the plan. Let me see. Hold on a second. In this plan was 27.7, 27 came in. And what we received in June is money that actually came in May. So I think we're probably going to hit very close to the target or might even exceed it. So this 321.3, when you just add the plan to what's already come in, and you compare that to what the Senate has come in, I'm sure they probably did the same. They came in 320.4. We would come in a little higher than them, about 900,000. So that's another number. Representative Ames.
Yeah, I just want to say that I'd go with the Senate number. I don't think we're going to do any better than that. And June is undoubtedly going to be a good month, but probably consistent with historical months before this pandemic hit us. And so it seems in the ballpark. And as I say, I don't think we're going to do any better.
Does anybody feel, who doesn't agree with what Representative Ames just said for 21? Representative Elmy.
Yeah, I think I agree with Representative Ames. We aren't completely recovered in our area. And when I stayed in a bit in a Concord motel, and it still had a lot of empty rooms. On our restaurants, people are still being careful coming to. So I don't think we should go above plan, but I think plan is fine.
Representative Major, Mr. Chair, yeah, I'd go with the Senate number, but you know, the only anchor that's dragging along the bottom of the sea there is we can't find employees. I think that's going to be the real slowdown until we get, because some of these hotels can't open to full capacity because they don't have people. But same thing with restaurants. But I think we just go with the Senate number. I think we're going to definitely hit that.
Okay, the Senate number was 320.4. Who disagrees with that? Then we will move on to FY22. And if you look at the ERA of growth in meals and rooms, it said 5 to 10%. Normally, when there's no pandemic or that, you can always plan on 5%. I would think that (2022), we probably would get close to that 5%. Was another suggestion. And 5% would come out to be what number? Somebody got a calculator they can keep going.
The Senate took 7% for this year and then went down to 5%. I calculated them out.
Okay, they took 7%.
Yeah, and 5% is 336.4.
Okay, that's why there's 342.87%. And that's really growing on a really weak base. If pandemic never happened, our base would be much higher.
Yeah, correct.
So maybe that 7% is not bad.
Yeah, I'd go with 7%.
It's consistent with our March figures.
What's that, Representative?
Our own March 18th figure for FY22 was 341, extremely close to what the Senate is projected at 342.8.
And I checked May came in somewhat better than the trajectory would have.
So do we want to accept the Senate for the FY22?
Yes.
Sure.
How about FY23? They have a what, 5%? growth?
5%.
And that's been the average over the last number of years.
The 7% catches us up from a bad base.
Yeah.
5% makes sense.
So then if you're not in agreement to accept the Senate numbers for for meals and rooms taxes, just raise your hand. Otherwise, we can proceed to the next. I don't see any hands raised. Tobacco.
So tobacco, you see the Senate's at 247.5. The House was at 247.8. In 22, they went to 247.5. The House was at 244.8. The reason for the flat projection in 22, there was some feeling that you're not going to see a lot of change in some of the habits related to tobacco right now. That maybe in another year and a half to 2 years, you might see some programs start to help with, decreasing the smoking that people are engaged in. But with people being home and having fallen back into some habits, there was a feeling that the tobacco sales would continue to be fairly consistent in 22 as it was in 21. There's also some concern that, the cross-border sales will continue until the federal government does something with the menthol or the flavored tobacco. So, and then again, you see that adjustment in 23 down to 240. So that was there. The Senate's position of it slowing down.
Right, and that's a 3% slowdown, and typically that's what we've been seeing year over year, is about a 3% drop year to year. Does anybody have a problem with the Senate numbers? I don't see it. The IND.
Are we going to do liquor?
Yeah, the liquor.
Well, if you would like, we could go through the business and revenues that DRA collects while they're on the call. Then I can go back after and do the ones we didn't do in case they need to get off. I don't know, but just as a courtesy to them since they're waiting with us. IND was at the Senate was at 131.5, which was 2.7 million above the House position of 128.8. They went up to 138 in 22, which is a $1.5 million increase over the House position. And then they went up to 142.1 in 23, which was a 4.1 increase over the House position of 138. I don't really have anything to suggest as to how they got there. There was just some discussions that they just felt there was going to be that level of revenue.
Representative Elmy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I calculated out again on the basis of how much we get in June, excluding 2020 in the last 5 years, in terms of June relative to the entire year. And it comes out as 141.7 for the year. So the Senate is expecting a slowdown in June by those numbers. And I don't know whether that's because they were using the April numbers when they did their analysis, which did not include people catching up in May.
Right.
Yep. So your 2021 number for IND?
And on that basis, it would be 141.7. The average, June was an average 14.1% and didn't vary a whole lot around that of the full year for revenues. So it's a question, if we're expecting the more refunds to hit in June, then we might get to the Senate number.
What was the DRA range for this?
124 to 132. So it's also, that one is also based on April only.
Yeah.
So
You know,
maybe
my
they
feeling
could
about
tell
this,
us
if I
what
may,
they
I'm
feel
sorry.
about it.
What's that, Representative Ames?
I'm sorry, I broke in there. But what I would say is that my general view is that interest and dividends, we should expect it to be relatively high because it derives significantly from the stock market, which has done exceedingly well. So I would go with the higher number that Representative Almy is suggesting.
No, would also, oh,
Representative Tucker?
I think we have to assume that some of the people who have moved here during the pandemic and paid large amounts of cash for houses and are working remotely are newcomers to paying our dividends and interest and dividends tax. I think we have a new crop. I think that's helpful.
What was your number, Susan?
It was 141.7.
Okay, if you take what was collected year to date, 121.7, and add the plan, it's 139.1. And if you look at what has been happening all year on interest and dividends running 22% on the average for 11 months. If you take 1%, 10%, 17. Add that percentage to what the plan was, that would add another 3.4. It would come out 5 to 142.5. I would go along with your number. So see what I did is I took what's been received to date, and then the plan is 17.4. That's 139.1. And since the year to date for the last 11 months, it's been 22, average of 22% above plan. So 10% of the plan is 1.7, 20% is 3.4. You add that to the 139.1 and you get 142.5. And I'd agree with Susan's number. Any comments?
There's no question that the Senate's low. And, you know, just bringing it up to plan. What is that? Brings it up to 139.1, bringing it to the June plan. I think we're not going to go below June's plan. So yeah, it's probably going to be above the 139.1 and definitely above the Senate's number. Because the Senate, it literally looks like the Senate's low on this.
Yeah.
So I'm okay with what you just said, Norm.
Okay, so that I would go with Susan's number 141.7. How does the rest of the committee feel? Hey, don't be afraid to say something, guys. Yes or no?
Yes.
Okay, Sam.
Yes.
Then we're going to go with the 141.7 for 2021 for the IND. And then the on interest and dividend, the DRA estimates on 22 a 4 to 6% range and a 2.2 to 4% range. and 23. What do we, Susan, did you bring those out to 23, 20, 22 and 23?
I didn't. I'd be, oh, I did check what the Senate did, which was, which I can't read. I think that's a 5% the first year and going down 3% the second year.
Yeah. Okay, you're right in the middle on the second year.
No, up 3% the second year.
You're right in the middle for the second year, 3%. The five,
and it's right in the middle.
5%.
They took the middle of the DRA range.
Okay. So if we take the 5% and the 3%, what do we have for numbers?
148.7 for the 5. 0.8 actually. And 153.3 for the 3%, 2023.
Thank you. Let me just check. Yeah, the Senate's way down.
I don't understand why they're so low.
And we know interest rates are going to go up. I don't have a problem with these numbers. Does somebody else have another set?
Can someone repeat the 22 number?
The 22 number is 141.7.
No, that's 21.
I mean, that's 21. 148.8.
Got it right.
For 22 and 153.3 for 23.
Before we.
Looks good to me.
Yeah, I mean, I'm okay with it. Just, can we just ask DRA why why their ranges are so much lower than that?
It's from April.
Carolyn or Melissa?
Sure. Just to give some information, May came in how we anticipated. The reason for the decline in June is based on estimate payments. Estimate payments have been running about 5% below all year long. So we made an adjustment to plan for estimate payments because it's not a return month, it's an estimate payment month.
Can you explain why the year to date for 11 months we're running 22% above plan?
Sure, that's primarily driven by returns and extensions and tax notice payments. So the activity in 2020 performed better than what taxpayers anticipated. So when they filed their 2020 return in 2021, they paid more than anticipated. And then it looks like they have adjusted their estimate payments down some compared to 2019. So we thought there would be a decrease in June as it's the second quarter estimate payment to be more on trend with what we saw in March and April for estimate payments compared to 2019.
Our trigger is what we come up with for FY 2021. FY 2021 is just about over. And this 141.6 or 141.7 for 2021 looks like a good number. Now the Senate had 131.5, which is $10 million less.
Back up, Norm, because you said we added plan to the number. So it must be that the DRA doesn't feel we're going to hit plan for June. Is that what I'm hearing, Melissa?
That's correct, because
Oh, okay.
it's an estimate month and we've been running behind on estimate payments for IND. They've been reporting less than anticipated estimates. We do not think that we'll hit plan for June for IND based on estimates, not based on returns and extensions, because those are not due in June.
So how much lower would the estimates be?
So
they're talking $10 million.
So we have, they can range between 5% below plan for June. Hold on one second. We think, excuse me, let me take it back. We think they're going to be around 15% below plan for June.
Now, plan is 17.4 million. 10% would be 1.7.
We think they're going to come in around 14.8 million.
14.8. So that 14.8. So that's $2.6 million less. So if we adjust our base 2.6, then we would be down to 139.1.
I had 136.5.
And so did I, Susan.
Oh, okay.
That's the number.
How much did you adjust the 17.4? 15%.
Year to date, May plus 14.8. And May, up to May is 121.7.
I think you need to take out the anomalous receivable
Oh, yes.
of 9.2 million.
Yes.
That's not in TAS's number.
Oh, that's a lot.
Yes. Okay.
Boy, yeah.
That accounts for the $10 million.
Yep, there it is. Yeah.
More than 10 million now.
Yeah. Thank you, Melissa.
You're welcome.
It's down to 127.3 by my numbers. Which is below Senate.
So
we already have in-house $121.7 million.
And we take out 14.8 for the 15% loss. And we take out the anomalies.
The 15% is on the plan. And the plan was 17.4. And so that should be 15% of 17.4. It should be 2 point something.
So 127.8 minus the 9.2, right? Which is the anomalous revenue. Then we got to add, then we got to say, okay, what was June's plan again? June's plan was
17.4.
So 18.6, so 17.4, and we said, and then Melissa, what did you say? What was that, 50? How much below plan, percentage wise? Melissa?
15%.
So that means, yeah, call it 14.8. So we add 14.8. $133.4.
So just to give you a little bit more information, I'm trying to open numbers here, but our range for IND is 124 to 132. So there's definitely room in there. If you think the 15% is too low, our high is 132 again for IND with the anomalous receivable removed.
Can I try the calculations again?
Yeah.
We were at 141. We've 0.7. We've got to take out 9.2 for the anomalies.
Why don't we reckon
And they're saying that they think June is going to come in at 14.8. So we then add that. Oh, sorry, not to the 147. We'd add that to we're adding to the 121.7. We're taking out 9.2. We're adding in 15% of 85% of plan that DRA said is 14.8 for June.
let me go over that. So we have $121.7 million in the door
No,
for
we have,
11 months.
no, Norm.
We removed $9.2 million because of
All right, 121, yes. I'm sorry, yes, you're right.
accrual. And so what is left is 112.5. And then since we're going to reduce the plan by 15%, we're going to add another 14.8. When you add that, it's 127.3. And that ends us right in the middle of what the DRA estimate was. Just about.
Basically the same as our March estimates. A little bit less.
Yeah, a little less. 127.3 versus 128.8. So
Why don't we just stick with our March estimates?
yes. And then we can grow that by the 5%. We grow the 128.8 by 5%.
Did we agree to the 7%?
What's that?
I thought we had to agree to the 7% for the first year.
No, that was rooms and meals. The Senate was using the same middle range, which is 5% the first year and then 3% the second year.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Let's get the calculator going.
No,
135.3.
Yep, I'm good.
We grow that by 3%.
139.3.
So what we have for FY21 is 128.8, 22, 135.3, and 23, 139.3. Susan, what do you say? Reasonable?
Yeah, it sounds reasonable to me. I think the Senate's slightly higher than we are.
That's all right.
It's all right.
We had a good discussion. We corrected we had people help steer us in the right path, and we've come to this. Who can we go with this? Who objects to going with these numbers? Then we will go with 128.8 for 21, 135.3 for 22, and 139.3 for 23 for IND. The next DRA number is for communications.
Wasn't it 127.3 for 21?
It was, but they kept the number we had in March, which is almost the same, a little bit higher.
Okay, so that's what we'll go with for that. For communications. Communications,
So the Senate took the 39.1 for all 3 years. It was the adjustment that was provided by DRA through the April activity.
and so they had the April numbers. So I'd say we go with the Senate numbers for communications.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Everybody agree?
Yes.
Are we going to get the,
Chris will provide us, after this is over, he'll provide us with the updated numbers. Okay.
So the next revenue source is the real estate transfer tax.
Yes.
The 2021 number for the Senate was 204 million, which was a $10 million increase over the House Ways and Means of 194. They dropped to 197.8 in 22, and then to 181.9 in 23. There was some discussion that the real estate sales will continue to be strong, at least in the first half of the next year. And then it'll start to slow down and you'll see a dip in that tax area.
Yeah, they took off 3% in 22 and 8% in 23. And we took off a little bit more, but evenly divided pretty much. 6.2 and 6%.
Okay.
The base year, can we start with the base year?
On FY21, go ahead, Representative Romney.
Right, May actual was 183.5 minus the 0.2 adjustment. I think it was 0.2. Yep. Yeah, 0.2. So through May, it's 183.3. Now May, we're at 15.5 revenue. So that would bring us up to 198.8 if we replicated May, but that's 5.2 million below the Senate's base. So the question is, again, like the others, what do we think May is going to do? So, and I'm not sure what May's plan was, but in this one, I don't know if plan really makes any difference because it's been, so much higher. But again, if I'm starting to sense a little slowing. I don't know. In my town, anyway, I mean, it's so anecdotal. I shouldn't even say it, but we have a magazine that comes out with the sales for the month, and it was stacked about 6 months ago. It was like a whole page worth. There were only 3 sales in my town last month, which got me a little nervous that, so, but anyway, even if we say May, if we say June is equivalent to May in terms of ret, although I forget, is there a delay of a month on this reporting of this one as well?
Yes.
Yep.
All right, we are going into the buying and selling season. So I would imagine that June could be higher. So I don't know. We're at 183.3. If we stayed with May's number, that would put us at 198.8. Senate's 5 is at 204. So do we feel that May is going to be 20 million.7? Question. When we compare ourselves to the Senate.
Okay, Representative Spilsbury.
Just anecdotally, in Charlestown for weeks, there's been exactly one house on the market and one lot. Yesterday, a second house came on. This has been a trend for a couple of months now that inventory has really dropped dramatically. So prices are up, but transactions are down.
Okay. Representative Early.
Yeah, there we go. Interesting conversation in Hudson, which is, like you are, Norm. We're in the so-called golden triangle of the decade ago. Our sales are down. Houses on the market are existing houses, and we only have one new planned development, only one. And that's only going to be 5 houses.
Okay. We want to get FY 2021.
Yeah, right, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Almy.
Thank you. I am going by the newspaper index at this point. We had been having until mid-May, I think, we'd been having we'd been having 4 pages of closely packed house photographs for sale in the Upper Valley. And we are a center of things, and we are going to be producing a lot of housing later, but it's not going to be started till next year. And last weekend, on the day that the housing ads come, there were 2 pages of large pictures of houses. That is, I think it was something like 10 houses for the whole Upper Valley area that were for sale. And they were for sale for huge amounts of money.
Okay. The revenue for FY 21 ends June 30th. The revenue collected in June is primarily what was actually collected in May. So essentially, we need to collect that information and how much is coming in so far. DRA, can you help us out?
Sure. So for our estimates, we have 201.5 to 205.7. That is with June coming in on the low end 20% above plan, and on the high end 35% above plan. Plan for the month is 15 million for June.
Right. So 20% above plan would be, you'd add another 3%. Another 3 million, which would be, okay, yeah, you're 201.5. Okay. So do we want to split it and go to, let's see, the difference is 4.
201.5 sounds right on.
201.5. Okay.
I wouldn't go above that.
So the suggestion is 201.5, and who has another suggestion? Representative Almy, did you have another suggestion?
Oh, sorry, no, I just said I wouldn't go above that one, but
okay,
that one's okay.
Then we all okay with 201.5? I don't see any hands raised.
That's probably a good number.
So that's a good number for 2021. Now we go to 2022. And the DRA estimates it'll drop 7. Their estimate range from minus 7% drop to minus 2% drop for 2022. And a 2% drop, essentially, it would be 197.5, a 7% drop. Somebody with a calculator, because it would come out to 180 something.
183.6 or 0.64, so call it 6 or 7.
And then the 22 is the, oh, okay. So the range would be from 197.5 to 183.6. Do we want to go, and the difference is 5%. Take the 2021 and reduce it by 4.5%.
Yeah, that's the midpoint. Yeah, I'm okay with the midpoint reduction.
Okay, the guy with the calculator.
Oh,
What was it, 4.5%?
Yeah.
192.2.
All right, Alan, you're faster.
Okay, and then to 23, the estimate is a drop -10 to -8. So what would a 9% drop be?
$174.9.
Wow.
Mr. Chairman, I think we really do have to anticipate something like this. The price of new housing is going through the roof. It's going to take a while before they figure out how to, if we ever do, figure out how to make housing slightly more affordable again to anybody. And I don't know if all of the big projects that are being planned, though they're needed by businesses in our town, are going to be built, given how much the cost of construction is going up.
Okay, what we have is we have for FY 2021, $201.5 million. FY 22, we dropped by 4.5% to 192.2. FY 23, we dropped by 9% to 174.9.
Seems right.
and those are above what our original estimates were. So they're below the Senate, but above what we originally thought.
The housing market did hold up for a while, but it really seems to be hitting them.
I do not see anybody chafing at the bit to disagree with this. So we're going to go with that. The next is the utility property tax. Chris?
Guess I was muted. Yeah, utility property tax. Again, it's a number that DRA provided. It's the 40.6 for all 3 years. Again, there's not a lot of activity or a lot of change with that. When they came into the House, it was 42.3 for all 3 years. So they had the benefit of an additional completed month, and saw that it was trending downward.
Does anybody have a problem? We go with the latest DRA estimates of 40.6 for all 3 years. And no raised hands. The statewide property tax, that's
set in law.
Yep.
Set to 363.1.
So we can't change that. Medicaid recoveries.
There was no change from the House estimates that were provided by the agency.
Fine.
So they're still at 3.3 and 2.7, 2.5.
So we like to hear.
So DRA's everything that they would discussed. So what's left is just what I would call the other agency revenues, and I can go through those relatively quickly if you would like.
That I would.
So we just did Medicaid recoveries. I'll take you up to tobacco settlement. The 47.8 million is what actually came in the door for 21 in April. There was no change to the estimates in 22 or 23. The Department of Justice still goes with the 38.2 and the 36.3 million in 22 and 23
So
respectively.
we'll take the Senate numbers for the tobacco settlement.
Lottery revenue, the agency came into Senate and bumped their 21 estimate up to 128 from what they had been estimating to be around 120. And then in 22 and 23, they kept their estimates the same at 125 and 127.5. I'll note here that the House had an estimate of 130.6, and that was based on what had come in the door at that point and trending it out with plan going forward. And you're probably going to be really close to that number by the time you're done.
So the only difference is in the 21 number. We're down
Correct.
to 26.
Yep.
I
So again, Senate Ways and Means took the agency's estimate of 128, which came up from 120 that they had provided to the House Ways and Means. House Ways and Means trending the revenue out for the rest of the year was very comfortable with 130.6.
No, I think we keep our 130.6. Chris, I think
I
it's
agree.
right?
Okay, we'll keep our numbers. Any problems with that? Good. The next one.
The next one is the other revenue. So the agency came down on their estimates in all 3 years, 21, 22, and 23. And the Senate Ways and Means accepted those adjustments.
Did they give any reason why?
Just the year to date, the trending in some of the transfers from the agencies that the revenue sources come from have been down, but they didn't have one specific reason as to why it was trending downward.
So we'll go with the agency's numbers. How's the committee feel on that?
Yes.
There are no
Yes, they don't really have a choice.
Beer tax.
The beer tax, there was no difference from where the House was with the estimates. They still 13.2 for all 3 years.
The same way with the securities.
Exactly. There was no change in the agency's estimates. They're the same as what they provided the House.
The court fines and fees.
There's
They went up.
a slight adjustment in the 22 and in 23, but the 21 number remained at the 12.3 million. And basically, what Donna Raymond, who provides the court information, just relooked at the numbers and felt that some things were starting to trend in a positive direction, where she thought it was going to be a little slower in that recovery as the courts opened up and some of the processing has occurred. So she anticipated a slight bump up in 22 and then being more normal, I guess, in 23 with their revenue stream at 13 million.
So how's the House members feel on the latest Senate numbers based upon?
Historically, I'd go along with the court system. They have a history in which the Senate has always bumped them up to challenge them, and then they'd come in anyway lower than what the Senate had bumped them to. So if Justice is actually volunteering these, the court system, then I think we should go with them.
Anybody disagree with that? I don't see anybody disagreeing with that. So the next one is
insurance. So insurance came in at 135 in fiscal year 21, and then 130 in 22 and 135 in 23 with the Senate Ways and Means, compared to the House position of 130, 128 and 134. And again, they saw better revenue streams in 21, and as they projected outward, that's caused a slight uptick in the out years.
Mr. Chair and Chris, So I look at revenue focus as of through the end of May, we're already at 138 with 1 month left.
Yep. What I don't know is if there's going to be any adjustments before the end of the year.
Right.
So it may trend to be closer to that number, but I just don't know if there's an adjustment coming.
And insurance usually does a good job in their estimates.
So we're saying, let's just accept the,
The latest insurance.
yep.
I agree.
I just wanted to point out.
They may do refund.
Yeah, I'm not sure how the refunds work in the insurance, so. All right. I'm okay
The
with
next
that.
one,
So the next one is liquor. That's the last one on this page. So liquor has come in 21 at 133. Even. And then in 22, liquor came in at 141.6, and in 23 at 141.2. You'll see the Senate has a number of 137.6 and a number of 137.2 in 22 and 23 respectively. So as you might remember, in fiscal year 21, there was an $8.2 million transferred from the liquor fund to the Granted Advantage Fund, or the Medicaid Expansion Fund. Back in 2019, there was a piece put in law that said if that fund was projected to have a shortfall, that the commissioner of HHS could request a transfer from the liquor fund to make up for that shortfall. Since that transfer, the Department of Health and Human Services has acknowledged that they expect there'll be another transfer need in 22, but they don't know how much. They also have, they're in the process of renegotiating some of the contracts with the providers, and they believe that's going to save some money. So they're still unable to provide how much, because those are ongoing negotiations. So the Senate felt, at least conservatively, knowing that the department has indicated they anticipate some sort of a transfer in 22 and 23, to just budget $4 million less in the liquor fund and assume that that's the amount that would be transferred.
Representative Thomas Southwood.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just checking, I drive by the new liquor store in Epsom. And I just wondered, did they have a formula for adding that in? So now it'll be open the whole month of June. And then, of course, it'll be open for a whole year starting in July. I assume they figure that in, but I was just curious.
Yeah, so they have revenue projections for each of their stores. And then when they do a renovation or a new store, they have some sort of an adjustment related to that. So there'll be some adjustment downward during the renovations, and then they'll have an adjustment going up after the store opens. Typically, the committee hasn't asked for that information from them, but I think they could provide it if you wanted to see it.
No, that's okay. I just wanted to assume they have a formula, so that's taken care of.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So
Go ahead, Representative Allen.
Thank you. So if they took 4 million off of each year, that's considerably higher still than what we had, I think.
Yes.
So the Liquor Commission increased their revenue estimates by a fair amount.
Yes. Yep.
And liquor has been doing a good job with their estimates. Then, does anybody have any questions on any of these that we've gone over? Because if not, then this will be the House Ways and Means position when we go into committee of conference on the budget.
So Representative Major, what I'll do is I'll basically take this sheet, I'll put in your estimates from today with today's date.
Yes.
Down here, we'll keep, I'm going to take out the DRA auditors because that's not in there at the moment. So that there's no place for that to occur.
Right. And we're going to have to fight for that DRA auditor.
And then we'll add in the 25-4 and the 44 related to payroll protection.
Yep.
Excuse me, the DRA auditors, I would leave at the 3 million because that was the House position.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm sorry. And then I would leave the 20 single sales factor delay, 20 million here,
Yes.
because that was the House position. And I would include the PPP numbers, but I would not move over the Meals and Rooms Fund or the
That's
additional.
negotiating.
Right, right. So that takes care of your General Fund Education Trust Fund. You do have your Highway Fund and your Fish and Game Fund. I just want to go through that really quickly with you.
Because there's not any.
There's a slight uptick in your highway funds. So and it's all in 21 mostly, but so that the gas road toll is up by $1.7 million over the House position. Again, Steve Lavoie from the Department of Safety, as they saw what was happening through April, the numbers were a little bit better than they had anticipated when they came in the middle of March to discuss it with you or your committee.
Still 16 million under plan.
Yes, yeah. It's slightly better. It's not at plan again. And then the same with the motor vehicle registrations. They saw an uptick in 21, through April that suggested that would be, a little bit higher by the end. So you'd see a $2.5 million difference from the House position. The miscellaneous revenue doesn't change. That's related to stuff that happens with transportation. But so that's, again, it's a slight uptick, but it's not, anything crazy, but wanted to bring it to your attention.
Nope. And then the Fish and Game.
Fish and Game is even less drastically changed. The only change is in their other revenue in 21. It's $100,000 higher. Again, that was based on what they had received to date through April. And they felt that the 3.7 million was more reflective of how fiscal year 21 would end with their other revenue.
Any questions on the Highway Fund estimates and the Fish and Game estimates?
Only will we agree with the Senate estimates on, I might say, I tried to figure out the 21 Highway Fund and came in within 200,000 of them.
So, and just to reiterate, the Senate took exactly what the agency provided to them with the Highway Fund.
So we'll take the Senate numbers for the Highway Fund.
And as you might recall in the email that I sent, I had a link in there. If you click on that link, it should take you to all the various agency documents that were provided to the Senate. So if you did have an interest in seeing the narrative that the agency might have provided, it would be found there.
And
so
and just for completeness, hold on a second. We'll take the Senate numbers for the Fish and Game. Any problems? If not, then that will be our position on these three funds. Any questions or comments from the committee?
I'd like to make a comment.
Yes, representatives.
And the comment is that you as chair have really done a superb job in shepherding us through this task. And I thank you for that. And also Chris Shea and DRA backing us up and guiding us. We all know that we're doing the best we can. We're dealing with a lack of data and unpredictability in the future, but we're doing the best we can. I'm thankful for that.
Well, thank you, representatives. Anybody else comments, questions? If not, then we just as soon as Chris has this, he's entered into updated his tables there. I'll get them out to the full committee. As a matter of fact, Chris, if you send them to the full committee.
Yep.
This
So
will be our position on committee of conference. And because we have gotten through this, we do not need to come together tomorrow.
So Representative Major, what I'll do is I'll put together the document. I'll send it to you in an Excel and in a PDF as I've done in the past. And if anybody finds any errors or has a question or anything that's not what you thought was agreed to, please let me know so that we can get it fixed and resent back out.
Yes.
So would you like a motion to adopt this as the position? Just to have one vote today?
You make that a motion?
Yes, I do. I recommend that I move that we adopt the figures as discussed so that they are the position of House Ways and Means at the Committee on Conference.
Who seconds?
I will.
And that's Representative Uri seconds. Representative Bernstein? Any further comments? Seeing no further comments. Representative Bernstein, I want to take the vote.
Sure. On the motion, let's begin the roll call with Representative Abrami.
Yes.
Representative Mary Griffin. Representative Ulrich.
Yes.
Ober.
Yes.
Representative Doucette. Is Fred no longer on the call? Representative Burstein votes yes. Representative Elliott. I didn't hear anything. Say that one more time, Bob.
Yes.
Got it. Representative Janigian.
Yes.
Representative Nunez.
Yes.
I don't see Representative Baxter here. Representative Spilsbury.
Yes.
Representative Tudor.
Yes.
Representative Almy.
Yes.
Representative Ames.
Yes.
Southworth.
Yes.
Malloy. Turn on your video, Dennis. Representative Malloy. Let's move on to the Honorable Representative Thomas C. Schamberg.
Representative Thomas C. Schamberg votes yay.
Thank you, sir. Representative Edith Tucker.
Yes.
Representative Gomarlo.
Yes.
Representative Loftman is not here. Representative Gorg is not here. Representative Hacken Phillips.
Yes.
Representative Murphy.
Yes.
And Chairman Major.
Yes. Now, Representative Malloy, is he here?
I think he had to leave by noon for a meeting.
Okay.
And Mr. Chair, there were 18 members casting votes. All 18 voted yes.
Thank you very much. We had a great discussion. There's nobody perfect. Nobody knows all the answers. But as we discuss these things, we find out more and more about it. I think we did an excellent job. Thank you very much. And we won't be meeting tomorrow. And Jen, would you, how do you handle that? Just put a note. So if somebody does try to come in.
I can let Karen know and then she'll officially cancel the meeting.
Thank you.
You'll be all set.
All right. And then we'll wait and see what happens with the committee of conferences. And we'll be seeing you on Thursday.
Yes.
Yes.
All right.
Mr.
Thank you.
Chairman, I want to thank you for that as well as this whole year. And remind people that the next term budget is going to be even harder for us to figure out, I think. So we need to all look at over the term at what's going on with those stimuli and what they're doing to us. Thanks.
Yeah, keep reading the Wall Street Journal, Financial Times, Economist, and listening to all your economists and commit and your local committees, businesses, because we need all that information for getting ready for the next budget. All right, thank you.
Representative Pillsbury has his hand up, Norm.
Nice to see you, Representative.
Representative Spilsbury.
Yeah, quick curiosity, in the same way that we just took a motion, do we put this before the House on Thursday to revise the officially adopted, or is that not done?
No, this is our position when we go to the committee conference.
Got it. Thank you.
Yep. It's been a great year, guys, even though we had to operate under pandemic conditions. All right, then, thank you.
Thank you.
Thursday.
Thank you.
Stay out of the heat.
All right.
Impossible.
I've got to go.